The leading members of the travelling escort have already arrived opposite to the reception area, and here now is the royal procession. The royal carriage, one of the landors from Ascot, being drawn by 4 Windsor grey horses. And you will be able to hear the cheering behind me as the royal party arrives at St John's. 2 carriages. The second brings the Queen's Lady-in-Waiting, the Countess of Airlie, Crown Equerry and other members of the royal party, but now Her Majesty the Queen has arrived at St John's. She is received by His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor, and he presents 2 captains of the parishes, Mr. John Cannell, captain of the parish of Michael, and Mr. Richard Gaughan, captain of the parish of Rushen. And now accompanied by the field officer in brigade waiting, Colonel Dick Hume from the Irish Guards, Her Majesty will move across the grass to the saluting base, facing the Guard of Honour of the 1st Battalion, the Scots Guards. His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, wearing the uniform of an Admiral of the Fleet. And as Her Majesty reaches the saluting base, we shall hear the Royal Salute and the National Anthem. Now Major Julian Lancaster, the Guard Commander, is moving forward to report his guard to Her Majesty the Queen. And now, with the Royal Standard broken out on the central flagstaff on Tynwald Hill, Her Majesty the Queen, accompanied by the Guard Commander, moves forward to carry out her inspection of the Guard of Honour found by the 1st Battalion Scots Guards, based at Chelsea Barracks in London. Wearing Guard of Honour order, the scarlet tunic with the buttons in 3s, characteristic of the Scots Guards. The soldiers wearing bearskins, which incidentally are made of real bearskin. The officers are larger, they come from the female bear, and this being the Scots Guards, there is no plume in the bearskin. Officers in the Guard wearing gold sashes, knots and slings, which are only worn when the royal family is present. And the state colour, which is on parade, was presented by Queen Victoria in 1899, and that is only carried when the Queen is present. It's a very large colour, it's 4 times larger than the normal colour. It's silk, heavily embroidered in gold, and carries some of the regimental battle honours. And now, preceded by the 8 state trumpeters in their golden state dress, Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness and His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor are moving across the processional pathway towards the National War Memorial, and there Her Majesty and His Royal Highness will lay a wreath. Well, after the wreath had been laid, the Queen went on to attend the usual church service before the processions made their time-honoured way up the rush-strewn processional pathway to Tynwald Hill, where Her Majesty the Queen, as Lord of Man, presided over the ancient ceremony.
The learned Deemster, direct the court to be fenced.
Coroner of Glenfaber Shealing and in Lider, fence the court.
I fence this court of Tynwald in the name of our most gracious Sovereign Lady the Queen. I charge that no person do quarrel, brawl, or make any disturbance, and that all persons do answer their names when called. I charge this audience to witness this court is fenced. I charge this audience to witness this court is fenced. I charge this whole audience to bear witness this court is now fenced.
Tam I cur yn chweil ffohera, ons enam tjan vanin, nach gin pecherby troja, bargert no berennis, ach de gin de chwilje pech, fregert tre te an eim. Tam I cur cortus an enish, de vel yn chweil ffohera. Tam I cur cortus an enish, de vel yn chweil ffohera. Tam I cur cortus a cledden enish shaw, de vel yn chweil ffohera.
Incoming coroners, take the oath in ancient form to execute your offices for the ensuing year and receive your staves of office from the hands of Her Majesty the Queen. By that book and by the holy contents thereof, and by the wonderful works that God hath miraculously wrought in heaven above and the earth beneath, in 6 days and 7 nights, you shall, without respect of favour or friendship, love or gain, consanguinity or affinity, envy or malice, well and truly execute the office of coroner for each seating to which you have been appointed for the ensuing year, so help you God.
The coroners receive their staves of office, which are short hardwood batons about 16 inches long, and they will now retire down the hill to their appointed places.
Learned Deemsters, I exhort you to proclaim to the people in ancient form such laws as have been enacted during the past year and which have received our royal assent.
Iru anein, slatus kies karsen of Lenik, the Karels van Reker act, the Kerk kies Shasakton, Aris Kervi.
Number 1, Income Tax Act, which provides for the tax treatment of captive insurance companies.
Iru Jees, slatus kiesa Curtis Shizakt, Leadhaga, the Leadhagan slatus kiesa Curtis Shizakt Nihid Yeg, 3 feet as Kajig.
Number 2, Company Registration Tax Amendment Act, which amends the Company Registration Tax Act 1974.
Iru 3, slatus Troll
The law relating to the transfer of securities.
Iru Jai, slatus Cronhern Thayak, Melia Vlenak, the Kerk Jensen Kamel Cronhern Thayak, Slovene Nihid Jeg, 3 feet as Nijeg.
Number 10, Millennium Public Lottery Act, which authorizes the holding of a public lottery in 1979.
Freeman of man, in your ancient Tynwald assembled, I call upon you as an expression of your loyalty to give 3 cheers to Her Majesty the Queen. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Has Your Majesty any further commands?
If any persons wish to present a petition for redress, let them now come forward.
The ancient right of free men of man to petition the Lord at Tynwald, the highest court in the land. Well, Millennium Year produced a record number of petitions covering subjects ranging from pollution by nuclear waste from Windscale Power Station to the future of the birch as a form of corporal punishment. All would receive the same consideration.
In accordance with Standing Order 140, I shall refer these petitions to the Standing Orders Committee of Tynwald, who will report on them at their earliest convenience. Tynwald will adjourn to the church and complete such business as remains to be transacted.
The captioning ceremony in the church is not seen by members of the general public. This is when the new acts are captioned or signed as proof that they have been proclaimed from Tynwald Hill.
Your Excellency, members of the Council, Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Keys, we shall now caption the acts just promulgated on Tynwald Hill.
Now Her Majesty the Queen is appending a signature to the first of the acts, which she hands to His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor, and she will have 18 of these documents to sign. By custom, those acts are signed using quill pens, the Queen's signature being followed by that of the Speaker of the House of Keys, captioning on behalf of the House of Keys.
Your Excellency, members of the Council, Mr. Speaker and members of the Keys, that concludes the business of the Court. The Court will now stand adjourned to Tuesday, the 10th of July 1979 at 10:30 a.m. in Douglas. The Council will now retire, and members of the House of Keys will remain to transact such business as may be brought before them.
And that turned out to be the last Tynwald ceremony as First Deemster for His Honour Deemster Roy Eason, promulgating the laws in Manx. Later in the year he announced his retirement, to be effective in January 1980. And another notable retirement in Millennium Year was Sir John Bolton, a member of the Legislative Council and former member of the House of Keys for West Douglas. He brought to an end a political career extending over a mammoth 33 years, for 10 years of which, as chairman of the Finance Board, he had undoubtedly used his professional skill as an accountant to help shape the island's prominence as a financial centre. He too would be attending his last Tynwald ceremony as a member of the island's legislature. Well, after the Tynwald ceremony, the Queen went on to Government House for avocado pears, poached salmon and strawberries. Then in the afternoon she travelled west again, this time to Peel, where the new secondary school was to be given the distinction of being the only school on the island to be opened by a reigning monarch. The name, Queen Elizabeth School, had its critics, but nevertheless there were large crowds outside it on the Douglas Road as Her Majesty the Queen arrived. And as the fanfare is played, so the royal carriage comes into the forecourt. I can see the grey horses now going past the main entrance doorway. The carriage comes to a halt. The door is opened, and Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, now in morning dress, have arrived at Peel School. Her Majesty is received by His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor, Sir John Paul, who is presenting Mrs. Betty Hanson, the Chairman of the Isle of Man Board of Education. She, of course, is also chairman of the Isle of Man Government Millennium Committee, so she has certainly a lot of responsibility on this day in 1,000 years for the Isle of Man. She is now presenting Mr. T.L. Ellis, the chairman of the Secondary and Further Education Committee of the Board of Education, the Director of Education, Mr. Alan Davis, and his deputy, Mr. G.A. Baker, the headmaster of the school, Mr. Bob Foster, and representatives of the contractors, Pochin Isle of Man Limited, and the architect, Mr. Anthony Snow, who will present the ceremonial key to Her Majesty, who will then open the main door of the building. The key is proffered to Her Majesty, who accepts it, and is now about to open the door and to enter the school. The door opens, and Her Majesty the Queen walks into Peel Secondary School, accompanied by Mrs. Betty Hanson, the chairman of the Isle of Man Board of Education.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellency, Lady Paul, my Lord Bishop, Mr. Speaker, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In welcoming Your Majesty to this school, I express the greatest possible joy and honour that the Board of Education and the people of the island feel about your presence here this afternoon. There has been a long-standing tradition in the west of the island for education, and in many ways this area has, over the centuries, been the vanguard of educational development in the Isle of Man. It is most fitting, therefore, that this beautiful school should find its home in Peel. Your Majesty will be aware of the great affection which the people here have for you and your family, and I find it difficult to express in words our gratitude for the honour which you are bestowing on us today. Your Majesty, may I humbly ask you to unveil the plaque which commemorates this historical event.
Now Her Majesty the Queen is moving across, accompanied by Mrs. Hanson, and she pulls the cord which reveals the commemorative plaque. The photographs are taken, and Her Majesty returns to her seat. Then a choir of primary school children from all parts of the island, conducted by Alan Pickard, sang two Manx songs, including the Spinning Wheel Song.
Spin, wheel, spin, turn, wheel, turn, and every leaf upon the tree spin above my head. With myself the spinner, spinning in a row, how we get my spinning done before the weaver comes. Spin, wheel, spin, sing, wheel, sing, and every slate upon the hat spin a lucky hop. With myself the spinner, spinning in a wool, else old trick trot will never get the thread. Spin, wheel, spin, home, wheel, home, and every wave upon the shore spin along with me. With myself the spinner, spinning the grey wool, how we get my spinning done before the weaver comes.
At the end of the opening ceremony, the future pupils of the new Queen Elizabeth School gave the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh a rousing send-off on their way to join about 1,500 guests from all walks of island life at a royal garden party in the school grounds. Well, the summer season continued through July, as everyone wondered what effect, if any, the millennium would have on the arrivals of tourists. There seemed to be almost as many opinions as there were people to express them, but as the season wore on, it seemed that, even though we may not have had the best of weather, we did have a pretty good tourist season. Eventually the figures confirmed it, a total increase of about 10% on 1978. Not much, howled the critics. What about the million visitors? It's very good, replied the Millennium's supporters. All the other UK resorts are reporting substantial decreases. We have an increase, and something has brought them here. Well, no doubt something did, but short of an individual canvas, it's largely speculation depending on your point of view. When the visitors got here, there was plenty going on for them to see, and in the evenings, a number of special concerts at the Gaiety Theatre, featuring international artists of the calibre of Mary O'Hara.
Is it a kind of a dream, floating out on the tide, following the river of death downstream, or is it a dream? There's a fog along the horizon, a strange glow in the sky, and nobody seems to know where you go, and what does it mean? Oh, is it a dream? Bright eyes burning like fire, bright eyes, how can you close and fail? How can the light that burned so brightly suddenly burn so pale? Bright eyes. Is it a kind of a shadow reaching into the night, wandering over the hills unseen, or is it a dream? There's a high wind in the trees, a cold sound in the air, and nobody ever knows when you go, and where do you start? Oh, into the dark. Bright eyes burning like fire, bright eyes, how can you close and fail? How can the light that burned so brightly suddenly burn so pale? Bright eyes, bright eyes burning like fire, bright eyes, how can you close and fail? How can the light that burned so brightly
Bright Eyes, sung by Mary O'Hara, who appeared at the Gaiety Theatre. Of course, the island is proud of its homegrown performers too, and a packed house in St. German's Church in Peel, soon to be the island's cathedral church, testified to the interest in a return visit by international soprano Margaret Curfey. Together with her husband Philip Summerscales, organist Stephen Barlow, and the Curfey-inspired Glen Faber Ladies Choir and Country Singers, they made their own magnificent contribution to the special events of Millennium Year. And still in Peel, the impressive sports hall in the new Queen Elizabeth School was brought into use for the first time for an exhibition by some of the world's best badminton players, brought to the island by the Isle of Man Badminton Association as their contribution to Millennium Year. It seemed that despite the criticism that Millennium Year merely gave the politicians an opportunity to hobnob with royalty and to grow fat at the taxpayers' expense, there were indeed many special attractions that anyone could enjoy, and often for free. For example, many public buildings were specially floodlit during the summer season, and more than one person expressed the view to me that the most worthwhile feature of Millennium Year was the spectacular floodlighting of St. John's Church. Well, it certainly was very effective, but if it was any criterion of official thoughts on the matter, then Millennium Year ended with September, because with the coming of the darker evenings, so the lights were switched off. That is, until a few days ago, when miraculously the lights came on again. They must have known what we were going to say. And how often in 1979 could you see such a unique fleet of proud sailing ships as we saw at the Millennium Sail Training Association rally at the beginning of August? Yachts came from all over the world, and were reviewed by His Majesty the King of Norway, who sailed here in his own royal yacht and stayed a week. Whilst he was here, he was the principal guest at one of several garden parties given at Government House in honour of distinguished visitors during the season, and these too allowed many ordinary people to participate, as guest lists were drawn widely across island life. King Olaf enjoyed more success than the revival of the once traditional Highland Games at the nunnery, which weren't well supported. Maybe it was fear of the Duke of Athol's private army which accompanied him there. In contrast, the north of the island revived the traditional cultural festival in Krunject, with the result that its future seems assured as an annual event, hopefully until the next millennium. And so the summer wore on, and the Manx Grand Prix Race Week, traditionally one of the last major tourist events, was soon with us. This year it was a royal occasion too, as despite the recent assassination of Earl Mountbatten, their Royal Highnesses Prince and Princess Michael of Kent kept their promise to attend the races. The Prince, a keen motorcyclist, had expressed a wish to ride around the course, and had indeed proved his point by bringing his own crash helmet to the island with him. The extrovert Princess had keen misgivings about the wisdom of this, particularly when she saw the competitors hurtling past the grandstand. Holding the Prince's hand, she implored, "Surely you're not going to do that?" "Never mind," said enthusiastic race officials. "You can see what he gets up to, because we'd like to offer you a seat in the road's open car that follows him." Well, she went, confessed afterwards to having enjoyed her trip immensely, and so did the spectators who watched them.
And I think now, just about any second, the occasion that we've all been waiting for. As I look up towards the paddock, I can see the machines coming out onto the circuit, and this will mean that His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent is about to make history by being the first royal person to actually travel on the TT course on closed roads, and I'm sure you want to give him a great send-off. His Royal Highness away for a lap of the TT circuit. And wonderful applause indeed as number 103 just finishes, and His Royal Highness off now for this 37 3/4 mile lap, and spectators around the course, I'm sure, are going to give him just as big a welcome as indeed the crowd did here.
Peter Neal describing the start of the royal lap, and at the prize presentation that night, Prince Michael received the surprise award of a replica of the race trophy for the fastest ever royal lap. And for the record, we also had local victories in the races, as Dave Raybon and Roger Luckman both won newcomers' races, and the Manx national anthem rang round the garlanding ceremonies. Everyone, it seemed, was using the millennium as an excuse to do something special. Even the Salvation Army, who decided to have an extra special effort to raise funds towards their citadel improvements. Joy Webb and a Timbrel group from North Wales came over to support them in a fundraising concert, not to mention the local person who wrote them a cheque for £65,000. Which proves that the Millennium Instant Lottery, in the process of selling more than 3 million tickets during the year, wasn't the only means of raising money quickly. Millennium Year not only produced a number of special events, it also seemed to produce a rather special level of achievement by Manx people. We've mentioned Steve Jockin, Roger Luckman and Dave Raybon, and there was another in the International Millennium Air Rally held in September. The RAF Red Arrows aerobatic display team was followed by an airborne Formula One Grand Prix, tiny aeroplanes flying at 200 miles per hour just a few feet above the ground, all stirring stuff. The winner was one Flight Lieutenant Brian Skillicorn, and immediately everyone wondered, could he be one of the Onken Skillicorns? Well, indeed he was, and another Manx victory was chalked up. The second week in September was the time chosen to revive the International Festival of Music and Dancing, originated some years ago by the late Harry Pickard and centred on Castletown. Alan Pickard, the founder's son, headed an enthusiastic organising team who brought groups to the island from all over Europe. From Germany and Sweden, France and Switzerland, expatriate groups of Latvians, Ukrainians and West Indians, old friends like the magnificent metal harmony band from Bern, and new friends like the Czechoslovakian folk group Usmev, which sounded like this.
Požil jsem si ho, kde mám já spát, leh jsem si vedle ní, spali jsme do rána. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Než bylo po roce, chodila po obce, nosila chlapečka z trankatý peřince. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Svoboda, svoboda, bohospodář skáče a kolem poctivost na kolínce pláče. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá. Dudlaj, 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 dá.
That was the Usmev group from Czechoslovakia. September's attractions continued with the International Trophy Car Rally, where the Scandinavian challenge faded and Russell Brooks brought his Ford Escort home first. Sadly, the local challenge came to grief on the very last stage, when Ian Corkill and Eunice Dale crashed their Escort at Ingerbreck and so lost a leaderboard place. And as we came towards the end of a long list of road closures, there were rumblings of discontent among many of those who found themselves living on the wrong side of the road, not to mention the rally cars that were alleged to be terrorising the open roads with unofficial high-speed practice runs. But there was still the Longton Motor Club hill climb from Hilbury to Keppel Gate, and entering into the spirit of Millennium Year, the Preston-based organisers wondered what special feature they could introduce. The answer was a direct challenge between a car and a motorcycle, the racing car to be driven by Formula 5000 star Brian Redman, and the motorcycle by former world champion and TT winner Phil Reed. For the record, the car won. And then, all of a sudden, it seemed that Millennium Year was fizzling out. The last of the visitors went home, the arrivals figures were published and people started thinking about 1980. But the golfers still had the PGA Championship between teams from Great Britain and Ireland and America to keep them interested in Millennium Year, and the Royal British Legion held their Millennium Festival of Remembrance during the appropriate week in November. We had hoped that maybe Kathleen Craig from Derby would change from Miss Isle of Man into Miss World. So far as we were concerned, she was well worth it, but the judges in the Albert Hall thought otherwise. So, as if in retribution, local businessman Trevor Baines and his associates bought the Miss World organisation lock, stock and barrel instead. Well, some would say that the chances of the competitors in Miss World are something of a lottery. And once the summer season was over, Millennium Year to many local people simply meant the instant lottery. Let no one say that the man in the street didn't participate in the Millennium, as even in the tail end of the year we were told of £2,000 per day being spent on the 25p tickets. We became a nation of scratchers, as hopeful punters revealed what they hoped would be the magic combination that would produce £500. How many of them, I wonder, gave any thought to the real purpose behind the lottery, to raise funds for the island's elderly and disabled? Chairman of the appeal was Sir John Bolton, unfortunately indisposed on his last day in the legislature. But how did he see the lottery and the appeal generally? His comments were read by his co-trustee, Mr. John Clucas.
The lottery has been an outstanding success, and the result, I'm sure, exceeds all expectations. The conduct of the lottery and its great success reflect great credit on the Finance Board and the officials of the Manx Treasury who have been responsible for organising it and running it from day to day. It has undoubtedly involved a great deal of work. Speaking for the trustees of the Appeal Fund, I must say that the response to the appeal for donations has been disappointing and resulted in something between £11,000 and £12,000 becoming available to us. However, the proceeds of the lottery have exceeded our wildest expectations, and we expect to have a sum of about, in the end, £350,000 to carry out our work.
And so, after lottery ticket sales ended on Christmas Eve, the jackpot prize to be drawn today stood at £50,765. Miss Isle of Man drew the winning ticket in the Villa Marina this afternoon, watched by David Collister.
Well, now the large drum is rolling. The red and yellow colours are going round. 500 weight of tickets are whirling around here on the stage at the Villa Marina for the moment everyone's been waiting for. And now, as they come to a halt, opening the sliding door. Out comes the ticket. It's being handed now to Mr. Radcliffe.
The name on the ticket is David Thompson. The address is 9 Bryan, B-R-I-E-N, Crescent. Now, the next part of it, I'm certain, in my estimation, it doesn't belong to the Isle of Man. It's spelt B-A-L-U-M-A-L-L-A-R-O. Now, where does that come from?
Ireland.
Yeah.
We're agreed on Ireland,
David
I think.
Thompson. 9 Bryan Crescent.
Well, just to recap, the man who finds himself over £50,000 better off tonight is David Thompson, who lives at 9 Bryan Close, Ballinamallard, Enniskillen, County Fermanagh, in Northern Ireland. And there were also 10 subsidiary prizes of £1,270 each, 6 of which came to the island, including 2 in the same road, Bromett Road in Castletown. Well, Millennium Year started with fireworks, and with fireworks it will end, tonight at the centre of the island's heritage, Tynwald Hill at St. John's. Has it all been worth it? Has it been a success? Undoubtedly the publicity for the island, worldwide, has been extensive to say the least. That can't be quantified, and neither can the benefits it will produce for the island. No doubt we all have our own views on the whole exercise, but what does the chairman of the Millennium Committee of Tynwald think of it, Mrs. Betty Hanson, MHK? Has it turned out as she expected?
By and large, I think so, but when one does something for the first time, one never knows how certain aspects of it will go. And I would love to do it now with hindsight, of course. I think everyone would like to do that, wouldn't they? But by and large, we have accomplished, I think, what we intended to do. And I think the first thing was primarily to make have a celebration for the people who are living here, make them proud of the Isle of Man, proud of their heritage. And the second thing was to let the world know about the Isle of Man, because I'm quite sure even the south of England didn't know about the Isle of Man, and I can honestly say we have accomplished it. I think the world knows about the Isle of Man, and we have got publicity which we could never have afforded to pay for.
Mrs. Betty Hanson. And so Millennium Year is over, and this programme has certainly not set out to recall an exhaustive list of the many events that were part of it. I suppose we're all left with our own recollections of it, with our own views of what they should or should not have done, our own views about the cost of it, of the likely benefits. Most of us will have our own personal memories of some particular day or an event that we saw or took part in, but I wonder how many of us will have done what Mrs. Marilyn Cannell from Kirkmichael did. She went to the Royal Garden Party at Peel School, and afterwards she gave us this for posterity.
The kids have all got a day off, gal, 'cause today is the 5th of July, and they are holding an especial Tynwald, 'cause 1,000-odd years have gone by. Have you seen that there boat in the harbour? Odin's Raven, they say, is its name. And to show that we are sprung from the Vikings, all the way down from Norway it came. There were 16 big men for to row it, all handsome and manly and hairy. With the downdraft of that there helicopter, it surely was roomy and airy. And the BBC shot lots of film of the voyage, the most hazardous yet. But at Portree, the ship it turned over, and 6 of the warlords got wet. But the men who completed the voyage will have many a fond memory. But what if there'd been a force niner, and the longship blew back out to sea? But they landed in wonderful weather, and they seemed none the worse for their toil as they raced up the seashore at Peel there, all ready to rape and despoil. Oh, this wondrous millennium of Tynwald, such palaver there never was seen, such great parliamentary ceremony in the presence of Lizzie the Queen. All the hobnobs, the bigwigs and gentry, all officials and secretaries too, got invites to the Royal Garden Party, and the captains of the parishes too. So I trotted straight off to me mother to scrounge me some gloves and a hat. I managed to buy a new dress though, all handbag and shoes, that was that. Oh, the scratching and scraping and bustling to get the Peel school near complete, with their rubbish all bunged in the cupboards and the tarmac still soft to the feet. But inside it is large and impressive. In the library and the new entrance hall were these wonderful floral creations, showing legend and history and all. We sat out there in the quadrangle and waited till we heard a cheer and the clippity-clop of the horses, and a cry of, "Her Majesty's here!" Betty Hanson, she give a small spout then, and the Queen oped the plaque that was there. The childer sang a couple of Manx songs, and the bishop he rendered a prayer. Then she walked out upon the new carpet to watch all the kids have a dance. She was smaller than what I imagined, for I knew the Duke just by his stance. And the turf it was cut with great gusto, and the hunter ends fluttered with bands, and that dance where girls slapped the boys' faces, but the boys really just clapped their hands. Then it's off to the Royal Garden Party, all the flounces and frills that were there. And me mother said, "Take in a hatpin," else me bonnet would have taken the air. Now the Queen, she was late in her schedule, when at last to the party we went. And the greedy had got there before us, and nor a crumb was there left in the tent. And we all stood around in a U-shape and chatted away to each other. And the Queen started off up at one end, and the Duke wandered slowly round t'other. They spent quite a while circulating, and they frequently stopped for a chatter. Prince Philip went round with our speaker, who's renowned for his knack of good natter. Oh, the stamina of that there woman! What a full day in Manxland she spent! And when she took the plane out of the airport, to a banquet in Scotland she went. And now that the big day is over, things'll slowly go back as they were. For we Manx got our names on the telly, and our Charlie was given a Sir.
Ian Cannell. And now, for this repeat broadcast, we can recall the short ceremony which took place last night at St. John's. It seemed only a very short time since St. John's was thronged with people as Her Majesty the Queen presided over the Tynwald ceremony on a summer day. And last night many hundreds of people gathered again at St. John's on a cold, crisp night to see the final curtain brought down on Millennium Year. The ceremony began with the arrival of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor and Lady Paul. And now, as St. John's Church chimes at 7 o'clock, His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor and Lady Paul have arrived in exactly the same spot in St. John's where they arrived on the 5th of July for the Tynwald ceremony. Lady Paul wearing a long skirt against the cold of the evening, and now a great crowd has gathered all around the area of the National War Memorial, lining the wall adjoining the processional pathway, which tonight is floodlit with fairy lights strung between the flagpoles which on Tynwald Day carry the Manx flag. At one end of that pathway, St. John's Church, bathed in a beautiful yellow light, floodlit right to the top of the spire, and at the other end, Tynwald Hill itself, floodlit and with the Millennium flag still flying from the flagstaff in the centre. Well, after the singing of Manx traditional songs by the assembled people and prayers by the Lord Bishop of Soda and Man, the Millennium flag on the special flagpole behind the War Memorial was symbolically lowered to signify the official end of Millennium Year. The band plays Abide With Me, and the people gathered around the National War Memorial sing that well-known hymn, so a party of cadets from the Isle of Man Millennium group of cadets marches smartly forward and begins to lower the Millennium flag from the flagstaff behind the memorial. Slowly the Millennium flag, the scarlet flag bearing the Millennium symbol, is lowered down that flagstaff at the end of Millennium Year. To the accompaniment of reveille, the Millennium flag was replaced on the flagpole by the Manx national flag, the characteristic three legs of man. And so Millennium Year was finally over. And as we're reviewing the year's events, His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor, Sir John Paul, is in no doubt which was the outstanding event in his mind.
Unquestionably the highlight was the annual Tynwald ceremony. This would have been a memorable occasion in any event. It was made immeasurably more so by the presence of Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh.
And His Excellency revealed that he had sent a telegram to Her Majesty the Queen expressing the gratitude of the Manx people for the Queen's participation in the Millennium celebrations by exercising her right as Lord of Man to preside at the Tynwald ceremony. His Excellency had received a reply from the Queen in which she spoke of the happy memories she has of her visit in July. The Millennium ended as it began, with fireworks, and a beacon bonfire on the hillside behind Tynwald Hill. And I said to one of the staff of the Millennium office, "I suppose you'll be out of a job now?" "Well, not for another month," he said. The government auditors want our help in collating all the information necessary to produce details of the Millennium's finances. Now that should be a very interesting Millennium Year project. And what of 1980? Well, I'm sure there'll be 1,001 things to do, and I hope it's a healthy and happy year for you. Goodbye.